This is the moment two Iranian anti-ship missiles lock onto the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, leaving a U.S. destroyer with only minutes to react. Launched from deep inside Iran, two Abu Mahdi cruise missiles lift off from a mobile launcher almost simultaneously. Moments after launch, they split into two different attack paths. One climbs to higher altitude to approach from above, while the other drops extremely low, trying to slip beneath the coverage of U.S. radar. What makes this threat even more dangerous is that these missiles don't require constant guidance from the ground. Their targets were programmed in advance, using a combination of inertial navigation, satellite positioning, and active radar guidance in the final phase. Their objective is clear: the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. But before they can reach their target, another ship detects the threat. That ship is the destroyer USS Gravely. Now the question is simple: is there still enough time to respond? At 3:43 a.m. local time, from a mobile missile unit operating deep inside Iranian territory, two Abu Mahdi anti-ship cruise missiles are launched into the night sky. Unlike earlier short-range weapons, the Abu Mahdi was specifically designed for long-range naval strike missions. The missile has a range of roughly 1,000 kilometers, flies at subsonic speeds of about Mach 0.8 to 0.9, and is optimized for sea-skimming flight to reduce the chances of being detected by radar. And now, they are heading straight toward the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group. Immediately after launch, the first missile banks sharply to the northeast and climbs to an altitude of about 15,000 feet. This tactic allows it to approach the target from above before diving down during the final attack phase. Meanwhile, the second missile follows a completely different trajectory. It uses a tactic known as sea skimming, flying extremely close to the ocean's surface. The missile maintains an altitude of just 3 to 5 meters above the water, racing forward at nearly 900 kilometers per hour. At such an extremely low altitude, a warship's radar can only detect the target once it rises above the radar horizon, which means the carrier strike group may have only a few dozen minutes, or even less, to detect the threat and respond. And although that may sound like enough time, both missiles were designed specifically to penetrate modern naval defense systems. The first ship to detect the incoming threat is not the USS Abraham Lincoln itself. Instead, it's an escort ship operating about 20 miles off the port side of the formation, the destroyer USS Gravely. While standing watch, the quiet monotony of Gravely's midnight shift is suddenly broken. On the ship's radar screen, two unfamiliar signals appear, moving fast and heading directly toward the carrier group. Almost immediately, the ship and its crew begin coordinating, according to the standard U.S. Navy combat procedure designed to produce a firing solution and defend the USS Abraham Lincoln. That procedure is known as F2T2EA. F2T2EA stands for Find, Fix, Track, Target, Engage, Assess. It is the core framework behind the U.S. Navy's air and missile defense strategy, and everything begins with the SPY-1 radar. With 3 radar arrays on destroyers and 4 on cruisers, the SPY-1 system provides 360-degree surveillance around the ship, from the 0-degree radar horizon all the way up to 90 degrees overhead. It forms the backbone of the first step in the process: find, detecting threats like the 2 incoming Abu Mahdi missiles. During this phase, the SPY radar can scan out to at least 200 nautical miles, searching for any object appearing in the airspace around the formation. At this stage, the Aegis combat system, which integrates the SPY radar with all the ship's weapons and sensors, simply determines what objects are present in the battle space. Those objects could be cruise missiles, aircraft, helicopters, drones, clouds, or even birds. At this step, the radar only needs to detect a reflected signal from any object. The Abu Mahdi missile attempts to bypass this stage in several ways. When flying in sea-skimming mode just a few meters above the water, it can hide behind the radar horizon, meaning warships might not detect it until it is already very close. In addition, with a range of nearly 1,000 kilometers, the missile can approach from unexpected directions, from behind the U.S. formation, from a low angle near the ocean surface, or from high altitude before diving down onto its target. Even though the missile is about 6 to 7 meters long, its body is designed to reduce its radar cross-section, making its radar return appear much smaller than its actual size. A radar signature that small can be difficult for many conventional radar systems to detect, but not for the SPY radar. Since the Iranian Abu Mahdi missiles can't completely hide from the spy radar, which is capable of detecting an object as small as a golf ball from more than 160 kilometers away, they have to rely on exploiting the next phase of the U.S. defense cycle, fix, accurately determining the target's position. As soon as the AN Spy-1 radar detects two unusual signals on the screen, the system begins transmitting radio pulses in the 2.5 to 3.7 GHz frequency band. These radar pulses bounce back from the targets, allowing the system to calculate each missile's exact coordinates, flight path, speed, and altitude. Meanwhile, the other side isn't standing still either. The two Iranian Abu Mahdi cruise missiles begin making small, curved adjustments to their flight paths, making their trajectories harder to predict. They rely on an inertial navigation system combined with satellite positioning, allowing them to maintain accurate flight even if GPS signals are jammed. In some operational scenarios, missile control units inside Iran can even update the target's coordinates while the missile is in flight, using reconnaissance data from coastal radar, surveillance aircraft, or satellites. This capability is especially important when attacking moving targets like warships, since their positions constantly change across the ocean. But despite these sophisticated tactics, the SPY radar still maintains a clear track on both missiles. The system immediately moves to the next stage, track. During the track phase, the SPY radar continuously illuminates the targets with radar energy at extremely high frequency, collecting increasingly detailed data about the missile's trajectory, acceleration, and direction of travel. All of this information is then fed into the Aegis Combat System supercomputers, known as Command and Decision C and D. This is essentially the brain of the ship's entire combat system. The C and D computers can perform millions of calculations per second, while simultaneously tracking and analyzing more than 100 targets at once. The two Abu Mahdi missiles are flying at subsonic speeds of around Mach 0.8 to 0.9, roughly 900 kilometers per hour. But the Aegis system is designed to handle targets traveling many times faster than the speed of sound. So for this system, tracking two subsonic cruise missiles is hardly a challenge. Within just a few seconds, the computers have already calculated a fire control solution for both incoming missiles. But before any interceptor missile can be launched, there is still one more critical step: weapon selection. During this phase, also known as targeting, the ship's Tactical Action Officer, TAO, must make a decision extremely quickly. It's almost like a high-pressure round of speed dating, where the goal is to find the perfect match between the right weapon and the target that needs to be destroyed. In theory, the TAO could order the launch of the advanced SM-6 interceptor to destroy the Iranian missiles. But that would be like using a $4 million missile to shoot down a target worth far less, not exactly a cost-effective choice. So with the help of the Aegis system, the TAO has only a few seconds to select the most appropriate weapon for the job. In this case, he chooses the SM-2 surface-to-air missile. The SM-2 is the backbone of the U.S. Navy's air defense system, and it's commonly used to counter threats like anti-ship cruise missiles. The reason is simple. Every missile in the Navy's arsenal is designed for very different missions. The SM-6 is intended for high-end targets or very long-range engagements. The SM-3 specializes in intercepting ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. The ESSM is optimized for close-range threats flying low over the sea. Anti-submarine missiles are used to destroy submarines. Tomahawk missiles are designed to strike land targets. The SM-2, however, sits right in the middle of all these roles, a versatile, reliable, and highly effective air defense weapon. But even after choosing the SM-2, there are still several different variants of this missile. Versions such as Block 3, 3A, 3B, and 3C look very similar on the outside, but internally they differ in their radar seekers, guidance systems, and control software. Depending on the type of target, each version is optimized to deal with different kinds of threats. Some variants are specifically designed to intercept targets diving from high altitude. Some variants are specifically designed to intercept missiles flying just above the ocean's surface. After a few tense seconds, the Tactical Action Officer, TAO, confirms the selected weapon. He then flips the launch authorization switch to green. Just seconds later, the ship's deck trembles slightly. From the Mach 41 vertical launch system, the SM-2 missiles blast into the night sky. They accelerate almost instantly, reaching speeds of about Mach 3.5, more than 3.5 times the speed of sound. Now the race against time has begun. 2 American interceptor missiles are speeding toward 2 Iranian anti-ship missiles, and the distance between them is shrinking every second. This is where the next stage begins. Engage. During this phase, the AN/SPY-1 radar establishes an uplink data connection with the interceptor missiles in flight. Dozens of times per second, the radar queries the SM-2 missiles for their current positions, and the missiles transmit that information back to the ship's control system. Using that data, the SPY radar sends course correction commands, allowing the missiles to make small adjustments to their flight paths and close in on their targets more precisely. As the SM-2 missiles approach the 2 Iranian Abu Mahdi anti-ship missiles, they enter the final stage of flight, the terminal phase. At this point, another radar system becomes critically important, the AN/SPG-62 radar. These square radar arrays, roughly 7.5 by 7.5 feet in size, are a key component of the Mark 99 fire control system used on U.S. warships. As mentioned earlier, the SPY-1 radar guides the missile for most of its flight. But during the final 60 seconds, the AN/SPG-62 radars take over. They project extremely powerful radar beams, about 10 kilowatts of power, directly onto each target. In this case, the targets are the 2 Abu Mahdi missiles racing toward the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group. These radar beams operate in the 8 to 12 GHz frequency range. The semi-active radar seeker inside the SM-2 missile is specifically designed to recognize this signal. Once the target is illuminated by the radar, the missile's seeker locks onto the reflected radar energy, bouncing off the target. You can think of it like a moth flying toward a flame. Once it detects the signal, it's almost impossible for it to resist following it. When the SM-2 determines it is close enough to the reflected radar signal, the missile prepares to detonate its warhead. The SM-2's warhead contains thousands of preformed metal fragments. When it explodes, it releases about 6,000 steel fragments, blasting outward in all directions at nearly 2,000 meters per second. Now, the final moment arrives. The first interception comes from the destroyer USS Gravely, one of the escort ships protecting the USS Abraham Lincoln. At 3:45 a.m., the Mark 41 vertical launch cells on the ship open. 2 SM-2 missiles launch from the system, sharply turning toward the incoming targets. Traveling at around Mach 3.5, these interceptors can cover 5 miles in about 7 seconds. The first interceptor climbs rapidly, aiming toward the Abu Mahdi missile flying at higher altitude, the one expected to dive toward its target during the final attack phase. With real-time data updates from the fire control system, the SM-2 makes continuous micro-adjustments to its trajectory as it closes in. At an altitude of more than 16,000 feet, the system determines that the distance between the 2 missiles is close enough for the warhead to activate. The proximity fuse triggers when the interceptor is about 15 meters from its target. A bright flash erupts in the darkness. The fragmentation warhead detonates in midair, releasing thousands of metal fragments in a concentrated cone. The body of the first Abu Mahdi missile is torn apart instantly. It shatters into multiple pieces, the burning debris falling into the ocean below. Meanwhile, the second SM-2 missile faces a more difficult target. The second Abu Mahdi is flying extremely low, just a few meters above the sea, trying to hide within the radar shadow of the horizon. But the SPY-1 radar maintains a continuous lock. As the interceptor closes in, the Iranian missile suddenly changes direction, banking sharply in an attempt to evade interception. But by then, it's too late. The American interceptor drops altitude sharply, cutting across the missile's flight path. In a split second, the warhead detonates directly in front of the Abu Mahdi's nose. Thousands of metal fragments slam into the missile at extreme speed, shredding its airframe and destroying its control systems. What remains loses stability, spinning wildly in the air before plunging into the sea and disappearing beneath the waves. But the mission isn't over yet. After the SM-2 interceptors detonate, the AN/SPY-1 radar continues scanning the entire area. The system examines every piece of debris, analyzing its trajectory, speed, and radar signature. If any object still shows characteristics similar to a missile, aircraft, or other aerial threat, the Aegis system and the entire crew continues to treat it as a potential danger. That means the ship is ready to launch additional interceptors if necessary. Only when the radar display is completely clear, when no objects are moving along a dangerous trajectory, can the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group be confident that the threat has truly been eliminated. But even when the radar screen finally appears clean, the sailors in the Abraham Lincoln Strike Group have no way of knowing that the attack is far from over. In the brief moment of quiet after the 2 Iranian missiles are intercepted, many sailors aboard the escort ships might assume the danger has passed. In reality, the situation is very different. No one in the US formation realizes that Iran is preparing a second wave of attacks, using a tactic completely different from the one that just failed. This time, they are not relying on outdated weapons or anti-ship missiles upgraded from the Cold War era. Instead, they are deploying a new generation of cruise missiles, weapons that some military analysts sometimes describe as the poor man's cruise missile. They are far cheaper than modern high-end systems, but still dangerous enough to cause serious damage. That weapon is Iran's Abu Mahdi anti-ship missile. To the untrained eye, it might look like a relatively simple cruise missile, but its origins and design are far more sophisticated than they appear. The Abu Mahdi is a long-range anti-ship cruise missile designed specifically to strike targets at sea, such as warships or aircraft carriers. The missile is built using Iran's domestic cruise missile technology, with many of its components and systems produced locally. At its core, it is a long-range strike weapon carrying a heavy warhead, optimized for destroying naval vessels. Each Abu Mahdi missile can carry a warhead weighing roughly 150 to 200 kilograms of high explosives. As it approaches its target, the missile can either fly just a few meters above the ocean surface to avoid radar detection, or dive toward the target from above during the final attack phase. When the warhead detonates, the force of the explosion combined with high-velocity fragments can inflict severe damage on any ship within the impact zone. Unlike many older weapons, the Abu Mahdi missiles do not require continuous guidance from the ground. Instead, they are pre-programmed using an inertial navigation system combined with satellite positioning, allowing them to fly accurately toward predetermined coordinates. In some situations, target data can even be updated during flight using reconnaissance information from coastal radar systems or other surveillance platforms. This means that multiple missiles can be launched at the same time without needing constant control or communication with the launch site. They simply follow their programmed flight paths, search for their targets, and strike. The Abu Mahdi missile has a range of up to about 1,000 kilometers. Traveling at subsonic cruise speeds of around Mach 0.8 to 0.9, roughly 900 kilometers per hour, the missiles can approach a U.S. naval force from extremely long distances. At a secret location deep inside Iranian territory, missile units have already prepared multiple mobile launch platforms. Within just a few minutes, a barrage of Abu Mahdi missiles launches into the sky. And now, every one of them is heading straight toward the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group.